RPG have always been among the most popular on PC. And today, there are absolutely no obstacles to prevent this trend from manifesting itself in the mobile video game market. Next, we will talk about the best role-playing games for mobile devices. Eternium, a very well-known multi-platform action role-playing game with nice 3D graphics and a traditional fantasy theme that has become the basis for the plot and the world around. The game is free, available for PC and mobile devices. It is somewhat reminiscent of Diablo. Isometric gloomy locations, old-school design, emphasis on constant battles, pumping and looting items, the presence of several playable classes at once with different development options. Genshin Impact, another huge hit in the world of RPG, with free access and a multi-platform basis, making it playable on mobile devices and desktop PC. The game has a huge open world with an MMORPG-like setting, although in reality Genshin Impact is a solo project, with the possibility of co-op play by a small team of friends. Genshin Impact has very bright and attractive anime graphics, and in general, the entourage of the game uses all the most important features from good fantasy anime. Vampire's Fall Origins, a role-playing game in the spirit of the old school, using hand-drawn graphics and an interesting gloomy dark fantasy setting, where in the medieval world, vampires, zombies, demons, and other evil spirits exist along with people. Vampire's Fall Origins has an interesting plot, an open world with a lot of different tasks, a lot of equipable and usable items. There are several playable classes with different pumping options. The combat system in Vampire's Fall Origins is turn-based, which is very convenient for a mobile game. AnimA, an epic action role-playing game with a twist on Diablo, which appeared on Android devices in 2020. A game that is full of dungeons with monsters, an abundance of loot and spells, a flexible role-playing system, and many other features that make it a great ARP for mobile gadgets. A dozen unique scenarios are already available for solo play in AnimA, and this number continues to grow with each new season. The graphics here are three-dimensional, relatively good. The design of the environment is typical for a dark fantasy role-playing game. In addition to ordinary mobs, each player's dungeon is waiting for a random boss with a valuable reward in case of victory. XenWar Battle Cards Arena game will bring you to the far future when humanity founded ultimate energy source called Xen. Xen is very important mineral and only source for interstellar engines fuel, teleporting lenses, and many other high-tech devices. Xen deposits are very rare and short-lasting, so everyone is trying to mine them as fast as possible, and Xen scouts, heroes, are the only ones who capable to do it. Your aim is to secure Xen deposit. Another scout will try to do the same. The only way to get resources is to eliminate your opponent. Battle is turn-based and each round is split into attack and defense phases. Magic Rampage. The genre definition of this game is a mixture of action RPG and 2D platformer. Moreover, the levels in Magic Rampage are drawn in a cartoon style, inhabited by unique monsters, filled with dangerous traps and secret places. There are many different types of weapons, armor, and other magical items that give the hero unique characteristics and abilities that determine the style of passage. A very unusual, but interesting game from the mobile RPG category. Darkness Rises. Role-playing 3D action game with one of the best graphics on mobile. The epic plot of Darkness Rises tells about a fantasy country that was suddenly crushed by a dark army with demons. Only a brave hero can save her, ready to rush into the thick of the battle on his winged dragon. Epic and spectacular. All this pervades the storyline and gameplay of Darkness Rises. Battles take place in very picturesque and gloomy places, including the depths of hell, where the hero has to overcome the most indestructible and bloodthirsty monsters. Final Fantasy XV Pocket Edition, the mobile version of the 15th part of the famous Final Fantasy, which has graphics and gameplay adapted to the capabilities of mobile. The first chapter is available for free to try out in Final Fantasy XV Pocket Edition. The rest will have to be purchased. It is worth noting that Final Fantasy XV Pocket Edition is not the only game from the FF series available on Android. For devices with this operating system, almost all the best parts of the series are ported, sometimes with minor improvements in terms of graphics and gameplay. Grim Soul: Dark Fantasy Survival, a free-to-play mobile game at the intersection of MMORPG and survival that has received more than 20 million downloads worldwide. A game set in a dark fantasy setting where you have to explore and survive, collect and build. There are, of course, battles where the heroes of Grim Soul, Dark Fantasy Survival have to fight all sorts of evil spirits. The game world is a dangerous Gothic Middle Ages, the lands of which are infected with an unknown plague and filled with rebellious skeletons, witches, alien demons, and other evil creatures that are hungry for human blood and flesh. The Elder Scrolls: Blades, a mobile role-playing game based on the famous universe of the Elder Scrolls, originally created for the features of portable gadgets. The heroes of the Elder Scrolls: Blades are blades, members of the elite Imperial Guard, sent into exile in the most remote corners of Tamriel, where they have to survive, fight monsters, explore dungeons, and discover the terrible secrets of a grandiose conspiracy that has become the basis of the plot story. A very interesting and atmospheric game in the spirit of fantasy, with original first-person battles and many other serious advantages. Exiled Kingdoms, single-player isometric RPG inspired by very old RPG. The essence of the Exiled Kingdoms gameplay is a free journey through a large fantasy world, treasure hunting, fighting mobs, crafting, exploring dungeons, and so on. All this with a fairly high level of difficulty, corresponding to games of the past generation, and the whole atmosphere and design in Exiled Kingdoms, as already noted, is clearly designed for CRPG fans of the end of the last century. There is also an in-depth character development system, as well as a system of choices and consequences caused by one or another decision of the game character. The game exists in a free and paid version. In the first, the ability to play for the warrior and rogue classes is available. Only about 36 locations, and about the same number of quest chains are available here. All this is calculated for about 25 to 30 hours of gameplay. In the paid version, users can access absolutely all the content without any additional microtransactions. The full version includes more than 50 locations and 90 quests. This does not include random quests. All this with the expectation of about 100 to 120 hours of pure gameplay. Dragon Nest M, mobile version of the famous role-playing action game from Asian developers. The game that captured the hearts and minds of millions of players from all over the world, using the famous setting and nice three-dimensional graphics adapted for Android gadgets. Game mechanics and plot, all this is in the best traditions of MMORPG. The game is beautiful and three-dimensional. The battles take place according to the non-target system. There are a lot of classes in Dragon Nest M. Each provides a large number of pumping options. The game used the famous Unity 3D engine, and the designers focused on cute anime images. The result is an excellent original visual style that is not demanding on the resources of mobile devices. The battles take place in real time. Among the game classes, a dozen characters are already represented, and others are on the way. Each character has its own set of skills and abilities that you can choose and upgrade. Battles take place not only against mobs with AI, but also against the characters of other players. The Bard's Tale, a mobile version of the cult role-playing game about an adventurer and swindler named Bard. He is not interested in great deeds and fame, so he takes on all sorts of dangerous quests solely for mercenary reasons. Yes, and he tries to fulfill them with minimal risk to himself, attracting other non-player characters for these purposes, using psalms to the accompaniment of a faithful lute. The Bard's Tale is a true RPG classic, acclaimed for its humorous storyline and witty dialogue, as well as sarcastic comments from an unknown narrator whose caustic remarks accompany the player throughout the action. Despite the fact that the plot in the game is largely linear, the game is still interesting to play through several times, using different options for the development of dialogues. Knight's Chronicle. The game has beautiful graphics and animation, a good story about traveling through time and space of many fairy tale worlds, a rich set of characters, spells, and weapons. In total, more than 160 characters are available in the Knight's Chronicle, from which you can form your own unique squad and go on an unforgettable journey through the fabulous universe of Garniel. There is so much basic content here that it is enough for 100 hours of study. The battles themselves take place in turn-based mode according to classic JRPG mechanics, which means that there are many non-obvious tactical possibilities. All this gives an incentive to go through the Knight's Chronicle several more times in a row, experimenting with the heroes and their abilities. All the characters in Knight's Chronicle are well developed not only as fighters, but also as artistic characters, and the plot itself is presented in an exquisite literary style. Moonshades, an epic mobile RPG that belongs to the ancient category of dungeon crawler. Players are invited to explore dark and dangerous dungeons from a first-person perspective, using their own unique character for this. One of the few modern games that does not require a permanent connection to the internet and which can be played offline. The heroes of the game Moonshades, of which there are two at once, are nameless adventurers. The player forms the class and other unique attributes of the characters on his own, and after they improve them as he progresses, who set off to clear a huge dungeon under the mysterious Black Castle. Here they will face giant carnivorous rats and spiders, skeletons and zombies, ogres and goblins, and even dragons. The game is aimed at fans of old RPG, although the graphics are fully three-dimensional and, by modern standards, are quite good. Blade and Soul. Revolution, a mobile port of the famous Asian MMORPG that uses the entourage of ancient Eastern martial arts along with a dynamic non-target combat system. The high-quality three-dimensional graphics immediately catches the eye, which is not much different from the computer version of Blade and Soul. There is also a large selection of game classes with their own unusual abilities, and in terms of the combat system, the game is very different from traditional MMORPGs and is somewhat reminiscent of a three-dimensional arena fighting game. Players have the opportunity to travel across a large seamless world, not only on land, but also on water and air, using the magical tread of the wind for this. There is an interesting plot in the spirit of epic martial arts films, which is revealed through high-quality videos. The total number is approaching 150. And of course, do not forget that Blade and Soul. Revolution is an online role-playing game. This means that other players often act as allies and opponents here, with whom you can join parties and alliances, as well as participate in large-scale factional battles. Pixel Dungeon, the famous pixel role-playing game that received a huge number of clones. It belongs to the category of roguelikes, with randomly generated dungeons and the permanent death of the protagonist. This means that the gameplay scenario in Pixel Dungeon will never be predictable, and you will never get bored playing this masterpiece. It's worth noting that while Pixel Dungeon was created with the express purpose of helping mobile device owners kill time, this role-playing game is by no means an easy one. Random events and permanent death, after which you need to start the passage from the very beginning, can seriously upset an unprepared mobile gamer who has never dealt with the roguelike genre before. Also, Pixel Dungeon clearly lacks a well-thought-out training mode, which is why many non-obvious gameplay subtleties have to be comprehended by a very painful process of own trial and error. Titan Quest. Legendary Edition is a remastered version of the popular action role-playing game based on ancient myths, fixed and rid of many unpleasant bugs, as well as containing all 3 major story editions from the original developers. The hero of Titan Quest through the mythical world, rescuing it from various ancient monsters and evil gods, unceremoniously interfering in the affairs of mortals. In terms of gameplay, Titan Quest is a typical Diablo clone with minimal differences. The locations in the game are very large, inhabited by interesting monsters and bosses, from which a variety of loot generously pours. There are a lot of game classes, each has its own development options. The graphics in the Legendary Edition have become noticeably better than in the original, which, by the way, is also available on the Google Play service. Battle Chasers: Nightwar, an exciting JRPG from European developers that feels quite comfortable on smartphones and tablets, although the computer version of the Battle Chasers is also available. The player gathers a squad of characters and goes with them to explore the ancient dungeons and catacombs, collecting treasures and all sorts of useful items, as well as participating in turn-based battles against a variety of opponents found in the underworld. At the same time, the squad can have up to 5 different characters with their own unique abilities that shape the tactical style of combat. Heroes can be upgraded, endowed with various privileges, and strengthened by collected items, weapons, armor, amulets, and various artifacts. There are a lot of different enemies in Battle Chasers. Nightwar, they often attack in groups. There are also interesting bosses here, which you need to study in detail and form effective battle tactics on the go. Ravensword, a third-person action role-playing game that catches the eye with its surprisingly high-quality graphics. The gameplay of Ravensword is centered on the journey through a highly detailed world with many secrets and dangers. Battles with different enemies, selection of equipment, crafting, immersion in the storyline, which is sometimes permeated with quite interesting quests. All this is quite seriously addictive. In addition to the picturesque environment, Ravensword also surprises with its very high-quality physics, which manifests itself during the battle. Ravensword will be an ideal game for those who want to see a beautiful open world in a mobile project, a serious combat system with an abundance of weapons, the ability to change the view from third to first person, use mounts, ground and air for traveling, as well as for all lovers of high-quality fantasy with a rich and thoughtful lore. Wild Blood, a very demanding and at the same time incredibly beautiful role-playing action game from Gameloft SE. The game requires at least 2 GB of space and a permanent network connection. At the same time, it demonstrates the maximum capabilities of the Unreal Engine on mobile devices. Battles in Wild Blood take place in real time in full 3D with a lot of bright special effects. The hero of the game is a brave knight seeking to clear the fairy tale world from demons escaping from the abyss of hell. In total, Wild Blood features 10 unique levels with different designs and a different set of enemies. At the end of each level, there is a boss fight. In addition to combat, the game also has puzzles that add a nice variety to the gameplay. If your favorite game is not included in this list, write in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel, watch our other videos, press like, turn on notifications, and you will always be aware of what to play today.